Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm going over the brand new July Balance Dataslate. But before we get into things, please remember to like and to subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you think of the Balance Dataslate. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, and a affiliate at Element Games, a affiliate at Discord.Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yes, I finished a night shift. I have another night shift. I have been up for a long time and I finally got the Balance Dataslate. You just have to update the app, so this may go up before the article on Warhammer community, but you know, we've waited 3 months. I'm sure it will be great and will fix all issues. Now, before we go fully into the Balance Dataslate, so if you weren't aware, this Balance Dataslate is the quarterly balance changes. Now, the only thing that really worries me about this Balance Dataslate before I get into it is if this is going to be the last one until after the World Championships of Warhammer, or if we have one more before. Because after this, the next one should be due in October, but Games Workshop loves using the World Championships of Warhammer to balance the game. So this kind of makes the Balance Dataslate, if it's the last one until Worlds, until after Worlds, let's get into it. So for the core rules changes, for Gallowdark, when you're playing close quarters on guard, if you do so you add this text to the end of the first paragraph. If you do, that friendly operative cannot counteract during the turning point. So this is effectively nerfing guard. So if you go on guard, you can't counteract. This only really affects elites, and it does there's niche counter interactions. For example, with Phobos Strike Team, if they use their ploy to go on guard, as well as with Hierotek Circle, then they can't counteract later in the turning point. There's actually a good change. I think this is pretty fair. And then for the weapon rules severe, this is going to confuse a ton of people. So change the second sentence to read: the devastating and piercing weapon rules still take effect, but punishing and rending don't. So if you have a way to retain a crit, this doesn't really do anything. If you also have punishing and rending, you would need to naturally roll a crit to trigger those other 2 weapon rules, which you'll see kind of going ahead. And then for the rules commentary, while shooting, fighting, retaliating, if I retain a dice as a normal success, e.g. accurate 1, can I use another rule to retain it again as a critical success, e.g. rending? No, a dice can only be retained once. Note, however, that some rules refer specifically to changing a retained dice, e.g. severe, and these allow a dice to be changed after being retained. So let's say, for example, I rolled a crit and then I also had accurate 1. So I rolled 2 misses, a crit, and a hit with accurate 1. I can't trigger rending to make both of those crits. I have to roll another normal success. So this is where it kind of becomes a bit confusing with severe, and where there's going to be a lot of confusion for current players. New players will be okay because you won't know this. You won't be aware of the interaction. So it's just more learning on each other's part. Now going into factions, we have Angels of Death. So by the way, I'm not a playtester. So Jeweler has been changed. Whenever this operative is fighting or retaliating, each of your normal successes can block 1 unresolved critical success unless the opponent has brutal. Wow, who could have seen that coming? Then the sergeants have been tweaked just a bit. So for your Intercessor Sergeant, Doctrine Warfare, whenever you would use the Combat Doctrine ploy and select Devastator, it's 0 CP, and then whenever you select Tactical, it's 0 CP, so just tidying up the wording there. And then for the Assault Intercessor, the same things happened. When you're selecting the Combat Doctrine and select Assault, it's 0 CP, and when you do the same for the Tactical, it's 0 CP as well. So no real change there. Now, don't worry, Angels of Death players, Games Workshop haven't just nerfed you. They've given you a very important buff. The Heavy Intercessor is now move 5 instead of move 4. This kinda maybe does make up for things, probably not. But probably Angels of Death made out the lightest of all the kill teams, but it's rough. It's rough. Then for Brood Brothers, how you doing? Insidious. You cannot use this ploy during the first turning point, so this is the free dash. Playtester. And then Icon Ward, the operative Broodmind Devotion. Once per turning point, when a friendly Brood Brother Brood Guard operative is incapacitated while visible and within 6 of this operative, you can use this rule. So this has been nerfed a bit. First, you have to be visible. Before you didn't have to be. And now it's only Brood Guard. So basically on your little dudes, it won't work on your Patriarch, it won't work on your Magus and Primus. So a bit of a nerf there. I was expecting it might become an action to do, like a 1 AP action, but the fact it's still free is great. Then for the Magus, for the Spiritual Leader rule, it's now a strategic gambit. If this operative is in the kill zone, select one of the following for friendly Broodbrother operatives to have until the end of the turning point or until this operative is incapacitated, whichever comes whichever comes first. So now you have to choose if you want to ignore piercing, ignore injury, or APL modifiers. This is actually a pretty good change. I actually thought about this after I published my changes video, and it actually makes the mirror really interesting. And yeah, it's the thing. I probably would have touched the -1 APL thing, but it's okay, it's fine. And then Primus, the Primus got nerfed. So, for change the relevant part of the first sentence to read, you can do one of the following, and then you cannot select each option more than once per battle. So now if you want to get +1 to the initiative roll or re-roll the initiative dice, you can do each one only once per game. So this is a bit of a nerf. Obviously, the Primus wasn't used too much, but it's still good. Like, you still get the benefits of those abilities. It's just you no longer completely control the initiative if you do take the Primus, but that's pretty much it. So some very interesting changes for Brood Brothers. It does knock them down a little bit, but okay. Then for Chaos Cult, they've seen some nerfs too. So for Exhalation and Pain, you can ignore any changes to the hit stat of friendly Chaos Cult operatives' weapons from being injured. So I just think they just tidied up the wording here. And then for the Accursed Gifts Barbed, change the relevant part of the second bullet point to read, the first time you strike during that sequence, you also inflict 1 damage or D3 damage. Now, normally this was every time you striked. Now this is only the first time. So it actually reduces the amount of damage output Barb does, which is quite a bit of a nerf. Oddly, Accurate 2 was untouched, so that's probably the better thing to take for Chaos Cult. So just a tiny little nerf. Then for Goremongers, for the faction rules, Sangue Vitae, Rejuvenate. The operative regains D3+1 lost wounds. What a great suggestion. And then for the Blood Herald, Impending Apotheosis. Once per battle, when an attack dice inflicts normal damage on this operative, so now it doesn't make it immune to crit damage. Note they did not actually tidy up the damage negation ploy in close combat, so you can still punch them for 1 damage if you have a 2 damage fist. So while this does slow down their healing and their resilience a bit, it didn't touch all the issues. So actually only really a slight minor nerf to Goremongers. Then for Hierotek Circle, for the Chronomancer, Psychomancer, Technomancer, Despotech, and Interstitial Command action, change the relevant part of condition to read an enemy operative all while counteracting. So you now can no longer counteract and do interstitial command, which is actually quite a big nerf, especially on teams where they were heavily activated. And then for the Chronomancer, the Time Splinter action. Both distances in the second and third sentence of the effect change to 5 inches from 6, not 4. And then for the last sentence, a change to read, note that a comms device from Universal Equipment only affects the first distance of this rule, so you can boost the range to 7 inches if you're trying to pick someone up, if you're not using your firefight ploy to boost the range. And then relevant part of the condition change to read, an enemy operative during the first turning point, or if a friendly operative has already performed this action during this turning point. So now you can't do this turning point 1, and you have a bit of reduced range. They did not touch the kill op, which is very bizarre, and honestly, I don't think they've done enough to Hierotek Circle. Hierotek Circle, still amazing. So, great. Hunter Clade have actually had some buffs. So, the asterisk has been changed for team selection. You cannot select more than 7 of these operatives combined. So the way this works now is you can now include up to 5 Sicarians without requiring the leader, but now you can also take all 3 different gunners. So you have some more selection in that, which boosts team viability, which is pretty nice. And then for the firefight ploys Omnissiah's imperative, you change the 3rd sentence of the first paragraph, you just delete it. So now when you select someone to have a different imperative, they don't take any damage. So that's okay. That's actually kind of a neat buff, but it still doesn't address the core problems of like the downsides of your special abilities. but at least you have a more varied team selection, which should be pretty cool. Then we go on to Imperial Navy Breaches. So for the Void Jammer for the Geist Skull, it's now Lethal 5 has been changed to Lethal 4, so it's a bit more reliable when blowing up. The Sergeant at Arms and Gunners are all increased to 9 wounds. Your Endurance has gone from 10 to 11 wounds, and then all other operatives have gone to 8. Now this is good. I actually think the team needed it. Why didn't they do it via stims? Because they've buffed Inquisition. Like, they've just buffed Inquisition. Why not just add this to stims? This is very confusing, but whatever. So we've got an Inquisition buff here, but otherwise, Imperial Navy Breaches are better. Will this help them? Maybe. I do think they operate a nice niche now where they are a very defensive kill team, but, you know, they don't need to have high damage. So maybe this will help, but we'll have to see. Legionary have seen nerfs. So Fickle Fate has been changed. Whenever a friendly Legionary operative is shooting a ready enemy operative, that friendly ranged weapon rules have balanced. You would delete everything about Ceaseless and Relentless. So it's gone down from Ceaseless to Balance, and it no longer procs anything else. Then Blood for the Blood God. You inflict 1 additional damage to a maximum of 7 instead of 8. And then for Corn Operatives, they do a maximum of 7 damage now instead of 8. So they've had their damage cap reduced. And then Implacable, it's been swapped around with how it works. So now, anytime you're shooting at a Legionary Operative, if you play Implacable, it doesn't trigger Piercing 1 unless you roll a crit. So you downgrade Piercing 1 to Piercing 1 crits. And then the Nurgle keyword now is the one that grants Ignore Injury. So they've made Nurgle good by forcing you to ignore being injured. So quite rough there for Legionary. Then for Nemesis Claw, they've also been nerfed. So in Midnight Clad, it's now been changed to if it's more than 8 inches from enemy operatives it's visible to instead of 6. So you now have to be 2 inches further away. Then for Return to Darkness, change the relevant part of the second sentence to read, in addition, it cannot move more than 4 inches during that action and going onwards. So basically, before you used to do a full 6-inch reposition, now you're actually locked to 4, which means it's harder for you to use this to get away. And then for the Visionary Operative with the Prescience rule, additional text has been added. At the end of each turning point, discard your Prescience points, so you can no longer stockpile them. That's quite the big set of nerfs to Nemesis Claw there. It's definitely going to affect their Prescience game a lot. Really kind of tough. Then for Novitiates, Blazing Inferno, it triggers for the Firefight ploy when you inflict damage now with any critical successes, no longer if you just inflict damage. So if you want to apply that Blaze token, you have to roll a crit. So not only do you need to roll a crit, you actually need to inflict damage with it. It will make sense when we see another upcoming team. Pathfinders have seen some nerfs. So Recon Sweep, you cannot use this ploy during the first turning point. What a great idea. And then for the Grav Drone Inhibitor, the first bullet point has been changed to read, whenever an enemy operative performs an action in which it moves, excluding dash, so before effect dashes, if it would move visible to and within 6 inches of this operative, treat the distance as an additional 2 inches and ignore additional distances from the obstructing and accessible terrain rules. So effectively, if you're still climbing over stuff, you still pay for the climb, but you don't pay any movement penalties for obstructing with razor wire and going for accessible terrain. That's good. They should have just made it work like Nanomine, but it's better than nothing. Note the fusion grenade still isn't heavy reposition, so you can still reposition dash and throw your fusion grenade, but it does hurt turning point 1 for Pathfinders just a bit. Then for Phobos Strike Team, Deadly Shots has been changed. Change the relevant part of the first sentence to read, or against an operative that isn't in cover and is more than 6 inches from it. That friendly operative's ranged weapon rules have the balanced weapon rule. So effectively now, you can't get within 2 and shoot someone and still trigger balanced. You actually have to be more than 6, which actually means, it represents, Phobos are a shooting team, but now you get a lot of benefit from actually rushing them down if you're playing into Phobos. So Phobos now can't really just run into your face and shoot you. So that's actually a big nerf to Phobos. They can't, what made them so good was this burst aggression, running into your face, getting balanced just because they were negating your cover by being within 2 inches. So pretty big hit there. Then for Plague Marines, Contagion has been changed, so the first bullet point has been completely deleted. So now Contagion only triggers when an enemy operative has a poison token or if it's within 3 inches of the icon bearer. So this is actually another huge nerf and really good for everyone else not playing into Plague Marines. It now means if you're a Plague Marine player, you really have to double down on getting out those poison tokens. So you actually have to set up a lot of your plays, which can be quite tough, especially if opponents are playing keep away. So this is actually quite a huge nerf. You still have your crazy heal, but Contagion was very powerful, and it does give melee teams more of a counterplay into Plague Marines now. Then for Sanctifiers, they've had some changes. So for the Confessor operative lead the procession, the relevant part of the third sentence is changed to read, but each cannot move more than 3 inches and must end that move in a location where they are still benefiting from the sermon. So unfortunately, you still pick people that are within 6 of the Confessor, or if they're a preacher on an objective, or if they're Holy Relic, but they can't move more than 3 inches, right? But it's still free mobility, so it's a bit worse, but still amazing. They haven't touched the damage negation. And then for the Reliquant operative, once per turning point, when a friendly operative is incapacitated while visible to and within 6 of this operative, you can use this rule. So you have to be visible now. And then for Blaze, relevant part of the first sentence change to read, if you inflict any damage with critical successes, the token can be used against one of your Blaze tokens. So I really like, once again with Hierotek, a very gentle nerf, which is very confusing. But yay, they didn't address the damage negation. They didn't address their damage output. They managed to hit the biggest problem people had with Sanctifiers, Blaze. Great, amazing. Scout Squad have had some change apparently. I believe they've just tidied up the wording of Emboldened Aspirant, so it's been changed to read. Use this firefight ploy when a friendly Scout Squad operative performs a shoot or fight action. If it's the first friendly operative to perform either of those actions during the turning point, or if that enemy operative in the action is the primary target and has a higher wound stat, you can retain one of your normal successes as a critical success instead. So just tidying up the wording there. Nothing huge there for Scout Squad. Warpcoven have had changes too. So the Sorceress attack for the Prosperine Khopesh weapon, it's gone down from 5 attacks to 4, and it has gained the Balanced weapon rule. And then for Brotherhood of Sorcerers, they've just lost the Ceaseless rule entirely. They only have Balanced. So they've reduced the damage output of Sorcerers, but also reduced the accuracy of both sorcerers in shooting and melee, because now they no longer get ceaseless. So that's a bit of a tone down in their consistency. So they're no longer constantly re-rolling everything when it comes to sorcerers. So that should be enough to tone them down, but it's some of the more lighter taps compared to other kill teams. The biggest thing is the Khopesh, so they now can't be as aggressive, so they have to respect people in melee more, but they're good changes overall. So for the July Balance Dataslate overview, I am not impressed. This is, look, elites have been appropriately hit. Elites were a problem, and I think all elite kill teams have been addressed sufficiently. Some have been nerfed a bit too hard without any kind of real compensation. For example, Angels of Death. But everyone else needed that kind of hit. Some they didn't go too far enough. Maybe they're just probing around. So a touching elite, messing around with counteract. So if you go on guard, you can't counteract after. That's very good. We've got the confusing change of, retaining dice. So if you've got severe, it will proc with retain, but rending won't. So it's very weird in that regard. But overall, I would say this is probably, unfortunately, one of the worst balanced data slates we've ever had. This has done very little to change the meta, apart from just making elites worse. So let's look at, for example, Hierotek. They slightly made the teleport worse and didn't really touch anything else with the kill team. Sure, yes, they can't use interstitial command as much, but they still abuse the kill op, which is one of their most egregious things. And to be honest, we were expecting more. It really feels like they either didn't know what to do or just didn't want to touch Hierotek and want them dominating the game, which is equally bad. Then for Sanctifiers, didn't touch the damage negation at all. They still have all this free mobility. Yes, they can only move 3 inches, which does limit the amount of where they can move, but still not enough. why the bizarre changes with Blaze? Why not just make hand flamers 2/2 damage? Sure, like, you know, if the Blaze damage now they have to force through a crit, which is fine, I guess, but they didn't really address the core issues of the team. Even with Goremongers, while like the general stuff was hit, it didn't really address the issue with their net damage negation in close combat, where like ranged teams who are like 2-3 in close combat can only ever do a maximum of 1 damage, and it will trigger every time they fight into these Goremongers, which is still allowing them to gatekeep. Even Brood Brothers, while Brood Brothers were nerfed, it was in a very confusing way and didn't even like really... like personally, I don't feel like Brood Brothers got nerfed that much. Sure, they have to respect some more matchups now, but that wasn't really much. And yeah, I mean, you know, Pathfinders, sure, they got some nerfs, but then they also left their crazy grenade alone. Is that intentional? It's a very disappointing balanced data slate, like especially with the Imperial Navy breaches. So far, Games Workshop have been doing such a good job in terms of balancing teams that are part of Inquisition that won't buff Inquisition. And then this time, it seems like they were just really lazy and then just buffed breaches in a way that would also buff them in Inquisition. Once again, a really simple way would just make the +1 wounds come from stims. That would have fixed everything. So it's just like, you know, I don't think people are going to enjoy this balanced data slate unless you played Hierotek Circle, Brood Brothers, or Goremongers, or Sanctifiers. Because it's great, right? You're just like, oh, yeah, we got nerfed. It's tough. It's really tough. Like, once again, I am happy elites have been toned down, but maybe, like, trying to play devil's advocate, Games Workshop of the mind of, oh, we've just hit the elites. That's the real problem, which is just, once again, really worrying. Because, like, even if you look at the stats were clearly showing that Sanctifiers and Hierotek Circle were really not healthy, but they've hit elite harder than those teams. It's very, very weird, right? I know they don't use stats as a primary balancing factor, but it's just absolutely strange. Now, as I said at the start of the video, what makes this balanced data slate worse or better is if we're going to get another one in October, at the end of October, or if we're going to get one after Worlds. Now, if you're not playing at Worlds, if we get one in October, that's great for you guys. If you're going to Worlds like me, it means they're probably going to release the balanced data slate a week before the event, and attendees will get it a week before it goes out in public. So we'll have 2 weeks to like do that. So it means either we're going to get a balance change 2 weeks before the Games Workshop's biggest tournament, or we're going to be stuck with this meta until the end of November. Each is really bad, right? So I'm not really hyped for this. I was like, look, I play Brood Brothers, and as a Brood Brother player, I'm just like, yeah, it's great balance data slate. But for overall game health, it's not very good. It's just weird. This is the weird balance data slate. I don't understand what's happened here. The Hunter Clade change, once again, the Hunter Clade buffs are nice, but it still doesn't address the core problem that their faction rules make them worse unless you select one of them, right? But the first time you use it, then it's not bad. Sure, you can, if you make you make the operatives better, but then you're disincentivized from using your faction rules, which I have no idea why they don't want to change. It's just very weird. I'm really not liking this balanced data slate, and I have a feeling a lot of people feel the same way. It's just so strange. Like, you know, Nemesis Claw, fine, yep, they were like effectively pub stomping. Angels of Death, Jeweler did need to be nerfed, right? Legionaries, that stuff all needed changing. Like, everything was great, and then it's just the changes are very strange. Like, for example, Chaos Cult, they did lose a bit of their damage output from barbs, but they still have accurate 2 torments, which is the biggest problem with the kill team. If you just made that accurate 1, there'd be no issue. So it does feel like a really like either half-assed balanced data slate, or they just don't care. It just feels so weird. It's, yeah, I'm not. The more I read about it and look at it, the more I'm not a fan. Like, obviously, elites are now a lot worse, but you know, it's just strange. I think probably like big winners so far are like Inquisition. As I said, on the other Horde teams I mentioned, Aquilans, it probably does retire elites for the most part. We'd have to see. Like, I could still see maybe Angels of Death maybe working. Phobos has to completely reimagine how they play, because now they're actually really vulnerable to being rushed down, which is actually quite funny. Hand of the Archon got nothing. Like, Hand of the Archon, Ratlings, all these underperforming teams got nothing. Now, maybe Games Workshop thought because they've nerfed elites, they want to see how that affects the meta, then go and buff those teams. But some of them you really didn't need to wait to see that. Like, Ratlings and Hand of the Archon needed buffs, and they got nothing. This is not a great balanced data slate, and yeah, we're gonna need to see how it plays out. You know, it's just weird. Like, the winners are the top meta teams unless you are playing elites. So yeah. Okay, like, I thought I was done, but I started reading this article, and my gosh, I have to edit into the video. So this is the official article. Now, this, while it's probably originally written by the game designer for Kill Team, it might have been tweaked by Warhammer community. But I read through it, and my gosh, it does add some stuff. So, quoting the game's developers, "We're happy with the way the meta is in the system overall, which means we can focus on toning down overperforming teams. The most notable adjustments are to Adeptus Astartes team, which have all seen some level of adjustment. Loyalist and Heretic Space Marines alike have a profound impact on the game so far, as powerful teams which are often represented at events. These adjustments should provide other kill teams with more counterplay and bring them more in line with the field." So, like, this is already wrong and very worrying if they think the current meta is fine. The current meta is not fine. So, as a reminder, Hierotek Circle and Sanctifiers are currently dominating the game. Part of the reason why elites are so popular is because they're the only reliable counters into Sanctifiers. It's just bizarre reading this. This is so worrying that the game designer put this out there. Like, it's really, like, we look at the stats quarterly, literally Sanctifiers and Hierotek over 60%, along with Warpcoven and some other teams, but those are the big offenders, and they don't even mention about how many badly underperforming teams there are. There are a lot of underperforming teams now which aren't really responding to the buffs they've given, and they haven't touched them. Now, while they may think it's elites affecting them, they are completely ignoring the fact of gatekeeper teams like Sanctifiers and Goremongers, which is bizarre and very worrying to read. It makes sense why this balanced data slate is so bad, but it gets, yeah. So while they do mention stuff about God, the change to Dueler with elites and in Midnight Clad, and the effect of Brood Brothers, Hierotek Circle, and Pathfinders, it feels like they don't understand how Hierotek Circle play. Hierotek Circle weren't this amazing Alpha Strike team. They mainly Alpha Striked against elite teams because they out-activated them. That was not their strengths. This is very worrying because it means while Pathfinders and Brood Brothers actually do have potentially strong Alpha Strike, Hierotek generally don't unless it's into elites. So it feels like they don't understand how Hierotek Circle play. And then even with Sanctifiers, they completely, like, they do touch upon the mobility, and it is a bit more reduced at 3 inches, but it's still free mobility, which they can easily proc along with their other movement ploys. They focused on Blaze, right? And as I said, an easier change would have just been making their hand flamers 2/2 instead of, like, it feels like, don't worry guys, our big brain idea, we fix Sanctifiers. Blaze is now harder to trigger. And you're like, that's nice, but that wasn't really the big, it was the big issue, and now we fixed the team. And then, yeah, you know, Imperial Navy Breaches and Hunter Clade have both been strengthened, great, but in lazy ways. Now, there is another thing. So updates to the classified format are approaching alongside the annual rotation. These updates will be made to the approved op tournament companion, which will be found in the Kill Team app and on Warhammer Community after the World Championships of Warhammer in November. Strikeforce Varro released Warhammer Heroes will not be part of the classified format. So does that mean Strikeforce Varro is not going to be a legal team? Like, I don't understand what that means, but it does make it sound like they might extend rotation to occur after Worlds. Now, we were all expecting rotation to start at the start of the new season, which should be around September. So the fact it may not is just very confusing, and now no one knows what's happening. So Games Workshop has not only given us a very underwhelming balanced data slate, but has now confuse the waters even more about when exactly rotation and classification is actually happening. They really need to put a more concrete article about this, because now I'm confused, and I was at their press briefings for all of this, and now I don't understand what their decision-making process is. I don't even know how classification is going to work. Is it going to work in September? Is it going to work after Worlds now? Have they changed the dates? Who knows? No one knows, because it's just very vaguely added at the end of an article. So please, Games Workshop, please clarify this. But overall, this article is very worrying and aligns with why we haven't had a great Balance Dataslate personally. But that's pretty much it for me today. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of the Balance Dataslate. Did you like it as much as me? And what changes would you have done? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, and a affiliate link Element Games, and a affiliate link Discord code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. I'm just going to shout my patrons. So for my adepts of the crew, I have Tom, the Houston Toad, Super Cow, Nick, Mr. Meatwad, Marshall, Lucas, Graham, Vangzu Draken, Dan, Dada Goldens, Chris, Alex, Amorphium, and Alexis. So thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. Now, I will be taking a break for a bit. I'm like really happy and upset at the same time. Upset because I'm like, this Balance Dataslate is disappointing. Happy because my Brood Brother proxies are gonna get finished painted. I am ordering my stuff for my display board. Why? What kind of meta is this? But don't worry, it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. It's fine. It's gonna be okay. It's fine. I had a bingo card. Here's the bingo card now. Remember, you can print off your bingo card and make your own. See if you were right like me. It's great. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. But remember, no matter what happened with the Balance Dataslate, you always have a chance to win, as long as you can roll a crit.